Chapter 18 in the Red Kayak. The airfare to Providence, Rhode Island was too expensive without reserving a seat way ahead of time, so my mom purchased an Amtrak ticket online and took me to the train station in Baltimore early the next morning. It was a 2-hour drive from where we lived on the Eastern Shore. When we arrived, Mom bought us coffee lattes and a huge, gooey Cinnabon, which we shared with 2 plastic forks while we waited on a wooden bench. "This trip will be good for you. I just hope you're careful," Mom said. "I'll be all right," I promised. Honestly, I looked forward to the 8-hour trip by myself. I had a backpack full of stuff just for the train. My CD player, snacks, a book to read, plus a lot to think about. In New York City, just stay on the train. Even though it stops, don't get off, she reminded me. I regarded her coolly. "I know, Mom, I'll be fine," I insisted, lifting up the cup of latte and blowing at the steam. When I looked at her again, she was gazing at something on the ground, and I noticed for the first time how many tiny lines had clustered around her eyes. Had they always been there? Or was she worried? Had the past month been hard on her too? I gently asked, "What will you and Dad do while I'm gone?" She looked up and started to smile. "Work in the garden, probably, and your father needs shoes. We might take a ride over to the mall one day." The mall was in Annapolis, over the Bay Bridge, 90 minutes from Bailey's Wharf. I was a little sad they'd be going without me. I speared the last big bite of Cinnabon and started cutting it in half with the edge of the fork. "Brady," Mom said, her voice changing, "I'm worried about you and your friends." I stopped cutting. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," she crinkled up her eyes. "You boys never see each other anymore." I nodded, agreeing, and wondered if my mother had further suspicions. "Is it because of what happened with Ben?" she asked. I hesitated, and then I said, "Yeah." Mom waited for me to say something more, but I didn't. "Unfortunately," she began, "sometimes people just don't know what to say when there's been a tragedy. Maybe JT and Digger feel like they need to give you some space for a while." I studied her as she spoke and decided she didn't suspect anything more. "You're right," I told her. "I think that's all it is." Just then my train was announced, and I practically jumped up, flustered, eager to escape, the Cinnabon container still in my hands. Mom stood with me and brushed off some crumbs off of my shirt. "Why don't you boys have the boys over when you get home?" "Good idea," I agreed quickly, handing her the pastry. "Here, Mom, you can have the rest." She set down the box and gave me a hug goodbye. I was lucky when I climbed aboard and found a window seat because the train was pretty full. A real mix, it seemed, of people with loud, noisy kids on vacation and quiet, well-dressed business types. Quickly, I stashed my duffel bag in the overhead compartment. The man I would sit beside had his laptop open and his New York Times folded up and stuffed into the side of his seat. He had to pick everything up and turn sideways for me to get by, but he was nice about it. When the train started moving, he went back to work, tapping away on his laptop. I pushed my backpack up against the seat in front of me and got comfortable, then watched all the dumpy backyards and trash-filled alleys slide by as we pulled out of Baltimore. For a long time I stared out the window until I realized that the city had slipped away. I leaned forward to unzip my backpack and rifled around inside until I found my CD player. I knew I needed to make a decision on this trip about what to do with that drill, but I didn't want to start thinking about it yet, so I put on some music, adjusted my earphones, and settled in for the ride. Up ahead, the train, like a snake, was making a gradual right turn, granting me a clear view of the engine and the cars in front of mine. It reminded me of the steam train ride my parents took me on years ago. The trip was a birthday present when I turned 9, and JT and Digger had come along. The train ran out in western Maryland, which is pretty far away, so we drove out late one afternoon and spent the night at a Holiday Inn. The next day, we boarded the train in Cumberland and rode up a mountain to Frostburg and back. We all got cinders in our eyes, but we had a blast on that train ride. Just thinking of it again made me realize how, growing up, we 3 were together all the time. Camping, exploring the woods, shooting baskets, fishing. We loved playing pirates too, and talked all the time about how we'd grow up to be Navy SEALs. My dad even helped us make our own boat once. Boy, we loved that little dinghy we made. We'd rowed all the way down the Corsica River to Pioneer Point, where the Russian embassy in Washington, D.C. has the summer place. The Russians had buoys out on the river for their boats, and we'd row up, quiet as we could, beside them, then suddenly sing the national anthem real loud because everybody said those buoys were bugged. We sure did have us a time, I was thinking, and it was pretty neat sharing a dream with JT and Digger, but there's no way I'll ever end up a Navy SEAL. This'll sound crazy, I know, a kid like me from the boonies on the Eastern Shore, but what I want to do someday is design buildings, maybe even parks and stuff. At home on the shelf next to my basketball trophies, I have a whole city of cardboard buildings that I carved out with my X-Acto knife. JT, his real name is Jeremy Tyler, is not likely to become a Navy SEAL either. His father probably wants him to take over the family business one day. It's only the biggest chicken farm in the county with flocks of 50,000 birds at a time. But the thing is, JT's a total computer geek, or genius, depending on how you want to look at it. I remember how one Friday, JT, Dad, and I were shopping, took a shopping list over to the Computer Renaissance in Annapolis, bought the parts, and JT put together a computer for us that weekend. DVD driver, CD burner, the works. JT's future is definitely in cyber, not chicken. Just then, the train crossed the wide body of water, which I figured to be the Susquehanna River. We'd be crossing into Delaware next, I figured. But Digger? Would Digger become a SEAL? I thought about that. Maybe. Maybe one day he would. Either that or a Marine. He loves everything about the Marines, right down to the food they eat. JT and I will pig out on bagel bites and frozen cheese pizza, and we put away a whole bag of spicy nacho chips between us. But Digger would turn all that good food down in a heartbeat for a pack of MRE rations. MRE, as in meals ready to eat. Military food that comes in slick brown plastic bags. His mother picks them up for him every once in a while at the Army surplus store when she's in Annapolis. Digger made me try one once. We sat in the cab of Dad's dump truck and tore open the bags. Beef stew, applesauce, shrink-wrapped crackers, and little packets of strawberry jam, iced tea mix, and a hot chocolate. There were matches, too. For cigarettes? Plus, 2 pieces of Chiclets chewing gum and one of those moist towelettes things for wiping your hands off. Digger might as well become a Marine. He already looks like one with his buzzed haircut. And you ought to see him in his hunting clothes, grunting away, doing pull-ups on that rusted swing set in his backyard. My mother used to say if he applied himself, he could get into the Naval Academy, but I doubt it with the kind of grades that he makes. His real name is Michael Griswold, but when he was little, he loved the backhoe so much that they called him Digger, and it stuck. Funny how we all have nicknames, even my dog Tilly, which is short for Tillman Island, which is where she came from. My mind was sure drifting. Looking back, I could see that there were things that we 3 did that I would never forget. Boy, like the day I was playing ice hockey and I went through the ice in that cow pond. It was Digger who saved my life. I can still see him sprawled out towards me, his chin bleeding, his tooth chipped forever, reaching both of his bare, cold hands out to me while I thrashed around in the freezing water and couldn't get a grip because the edges of the ice kept breaking. "Grab on, Brady, grab on!" And JT in the background holding Digger's ankle so he wouldn't go down with me. Ben's little face broke into my mind, scattering all those memories like ice chips. His little face with the blueberry eyes and the big dimples. My hands curled up into fists and my chest got tight, remembering something Carl once told me. Hypothermia makes you shiver real bad. Then your muscles get rigid and you kind of go into a stupor and pass out. I turned toward the window and bit my lip. God, I hope Ben didn't suffer. I hoped that however it happened, it was quick, real quick. So quick he didn't feel anything or even have time to get scared. Just then, the train's air conditioning or something must have kicked into overdrive because I felt a chill blow right through me. I shifted position in that train seat and rubbed my arms hard, but for a long time I couldn't get warm, and I finally had to get up and pull out a sweatshirt out of my duffel bag.